3 disturbing true ice cream truck stories. Story 1. The summer of 1998. My name is Mitchell, and I was 9 years old when this happened. Though I am telling this story now as an adult, looking back on what was almost the last summer of my life. It was July of 1998 in a small town outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and every afternoon around 3:30, an ice cream truck would roll down our street, playing that familiar jingle that made every kid in the neighborhood come running. But there was something different about the driver that summer. Something my parents noticed before I did. And something that still makes me check twice whenever I hear that music playing. Before I continue, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment telling me where you are listening from tonight. Because what happened that summer changed everything I thought I knew about strangers. Our neighborhood was called Willow Creek, a quiet subdivision of maybe 60 houses, arranged along winding streets with names like Maple Lane and Oak Drive. It was the kind of place where kids rode bikes until the streetlights came on, where parents sat on porches drinking iced tea, where nothing bad ever seemed to happen. My parents had moved there specifically because it was safe, because it was the kind of neighborhood where you could let your kids play outside without worrying. I spent that summer like I spent every summer, playing with my best friend Tommy, who lived 3 houses down, riding our bikes to the creek at the edge of the subdivision, catching fireflies in jars after dinner. We were 9 years old, and the world was simple and good. The ice cream truck had been coming to our neighborhood for as long as I could remember. It was a white truck with pictures of popsicles and ice cream cones painted on the sides, and it played that tinkling music box version of some song I never learned the name of. The driver was a heavy-set man named Carl, who knew all the kids by name and always gave us extra napkins. But that summer, Carl was not driving the truck. The new driver showed up sometime in late June. I do not remember the exact day, just that suddenly there was a different face behind the little window. He was younger than Carl, maybe mid-30s, with a thin face and dark hair that was always a little greasy. He introduced himself as Dennis and said he was Carl's nephew, that Carl had retired, and he was taking over the route. At first, nothing seemed wrong. Dennis sold us the same ice cream played, the same music came around at the same time every day. But there were little things that I noticed, even as a kid, that made me feel strange. He would ask questions that seemed too personal. What school do you go to? What time do your parents get home from work? Do you ever play outside by yourself? I told my mum about the questions one night at dinner. I did not think much of it, just mentioned it casually the way kids do. But I remember my mum and dad exchanging a look. One of those adult looks that kids are not supposed to understand, but always do. A look that said something is wrong. My dad started coming outside whenever the ice cream truck came around. He would stand on the porch watching as I ran to get my popsicle. Dennis noticed. I could tell by the way his smile would tighten slightly whenever he saw my dad standing there. But he did not say anything about it. About 2 weeks into July, Tommy told me something that made my stomach feel funny. He said Dennis had offered him a ride in the truck, said he could sit up front and help ring the bell at each stop. Tommy's parents were not home when it happened. His older sister was supposed to be watching him, but she was on the phone with her boyfriend and was not paying attention. Tommy said he almost got in, but something made him stop. He said Dennis's smile looked wrong, like he was pretending to be nice, but was not actually nice underneath. Tommy told his parents that night. They called my parents. My parents called other parents in the neighborhood. Within a day, every family on our street knew about the offer Dennis had made. My dad called the ice cream company to complain. He asked about Dennis, asked for his background, asked why Carl had really left. The company said Dennis had passed all their checks, that there was nothing concerning in his record, that Carl had retired due to health reasons. They said they would talk to Dennis about appropriate behavior. For a few days, Dennis did not come to our neighborhood at all. The truck just skipped our street entirely. We could hear the music in the distance on other streets, but it never turned down Willow Creek. Then he came back. It was a Wednesday afternoon, around 3:45. I was in the backyard by myself, playing with my action figures near the fence. My mum was inside making dinner. I heard the music start up faint at first, then getting louder. The truck was coming down our street. I stood up and looked through the slats of the fence. The truck was moving slowly, like it always did, but it was not stopping at the houses where kids were waiting. It was just rolling along music, playing, not stopping for anyone. It stopped in front of my house. I could see Dennis through the little window looking toward my backyard, looking at me. He raised his hand and waved that same fake smile on his face. Then he honked the horn twice and waved again, like he was trying to get me to come over. I did not move. Something in my chest felt tight, like I could not breathe properly. I just stood there, frozen, staring at him through the fence. My mum must have heard the horn, because the back door opened and she came outside. She saw the truck, saw me standing at the fence, and her face went pale. She grabbed my arm and pulled me inside without saying a word. Then she locked the door, every door, and called my dad at work. The truck sat there for another minute, just sitting, music, playing Dennis, watching the house. Then it slowly rolled away. That night my parents had a long conversation in the kitchen with the door closed. I could hear their voices, but not the words. When they came out, my dad told me that I was not allowed to go outside by myself anymore. Not in the front yard, not in the backyard, not anywhere. If I wanted to play outside, an adult had to be with me. I did not argue. For the first time in my life, I did not want to be outside alone. The next day, my dad went to the police station. He filed a report about Dennis, about the questions he asked, about the offer he made to Tommy, about the way he had stopped in front of our house. The police said they would look into it, but there was not much they could do. No crime had been committed. Asking questions and offering a ride, while concerning, was not illegal. A week went by. Dennis kept driving his route, but he stayed away from Willow Creek. We heard the music sometimes distant and faint, but the truck never came down our street. Then Tommy went missing. It was a Saturday afternoon. Tommy's parents thought he was at my house. My parents thought he was at his house. Somewhere in that confusion, Tommy had slipped away without anyone knowing where he went. The search started within an hour. Every parent in the neighborhood was out looking, calling his name, checking the creek, checking the empty lots, checking everywhere a 9-year-old boy might wander. The police came, dogs came, helicopters came. They found Tommy at 8 o'clock that night. He was in a parking lot behind an abandoned warehouse about 4 miles from our neighborhood. He was sitting on the curb crying, but he was alive. He was not hurt, at least not physically. The police found Dennis an hour later. He was in his truck, parked in a field outside of town. I do not know everything the police found in that truck, and my parents never told me the details. But I know Dennis went to prison. I know he was charged with kidnapping and other things that I did not understand at the time, and do not want to think about now. I know Tommy spent years in therapy. I know his family moved away before the next summer. What Tommy told the police was that Dennis had found him walking alone near the creek. He offered Tommy a free ice cream. Tommy said no. At first remembered what his parents had told him. But Dennis was persistent. He said he had a whole freezer full of treats that Tommy could have whatever he wanted, that it would be their secret. Tommy got in the truck. For the next 3 hours, Dennis drove Tommy around, while Tommy sat in the back of the truck, surrounded by the freezers and the ice cream and the music that kept playing through cheap speakers. Dennis told Tommy they were going on an adventure. He told Tommy not to be scared. He told Tommy that nobody would ever find them. But Dennis made a mistake. He stopped at a gas station to fill up the truck, and he left Tommy alone for just a few minutes. Tommy opened the back door, jumped out, and ran. He hid behind a dumpster until Dennis drove away looking for him. Then he walked until he found the parking lot, where the police eventually found him. Tommy was lucky. He was smart, and he was brave, and he was lucky. But I think about all the times that summer when I stood at that truck window buying ice cream from a man who was looking at me the way a predator looks at prey. I think about how close I came to being the one who got in that truck. I am 34 years old now. I have kids of my own. And every time I hear that ice cream truck music in the distance, I feel a chill run down my spine. I go outside, I watch, I make sure I know exactly where my children are. Because I learned that summer that monsters do not look like monsters. They look like ice cream truck drivers. They look like friendly neighbors. They look like people you would never suspect. And sometimes the only thing standing between a child and a monster is a parent who pays attention. Story 2. The Night Route. My name is Terence, and I was 24 years old when this happened. I just moved to Phoenix, Arizona, and I was desperate for work. When I saw an ad looking for ice cream truck drivers, I figured it would be easy money for the summer. The hours were flexible. The pay was decent. And how hard could it be to drive around selling popsicles to kids? I started the job in early June, and for the first few weeks, everything was normal. Then I was assigned the night route, and I discovered that some ice cream trucks do not just sell ice cream. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment with your location. Because what I'm about to tell you is something I have never shared publicly until now. The company was called Desert Treats, a small operation that ran about 8 trucks across the Phoenix metropolitan area. The owner was a man named Hector, late 50s, who had been running ice cream trucks for 30 years. He seemed legitimate. The trucks were clean and well maintained. The other drivers were friendly. Everything about the job seemed normal. My route was in a suburban area on the east side of the city. I would start around 1 in the afternoon, hit the neighborhoods, During the hot afternoon hours, when kids were out of school and looking for a cold treat, and finish up around 7 when the sun started going down. It was exactly what I expected. Long hours in a hot truck, dealing with sticky-handed children and the same 10 songs playing on repeat. But the money was good, and I needed the work. About 3 weeks in, Hector pulled me aside after I returned the truck one evening. He said he had a special opportunity for me. He said the company did some night routes in certain areas catering to adults who wanted ice cream after dark. He said the pay was better, the hours were shorter, and there was less dealing with children. He asked if I was interested. I should have asked more questions. I should have wondered why adults would need ice cream delivered to them at night. But I was 24, I needed money, and the idea of fewer hours for more pay sounded great. I said yes. My first night route was on a Friday. Hector gave me a different truck, one that looked the same on the outside, but had some modifications on the inside. The freezer was smaller, and there was a locked cabinet behind the driver's seat that I was told never to open. He gave me a list of addresses, about 15 of them, scattered across a part of the city I was not familiar with. He told me to go to each address, honk twice, and wait. Someone would come out to the truck. I was to give them whatever they asked for and collect the money they handed me. Simple. The first few stops were exactly what Hector had described. I pulled up to a house, honked twice, and someone came out. Usually a man, sometimes a woman, always an adult. They would ask for a specific item, something like a blue rocket or a chocolate sundae cone. I would get it from the freezer, they would hand me money, and I would move on. The prices seemed high for ice cream, but I figured that was the premium for home delivery at night. It was not until the 5th or 6th stop that I started to notice something was wrong. The man who came out to the truck was jumpy, nervous, looking over his shoulder constantly. He asked for something called a Snow White special. I had not heard of that item before, and it was not in my freezer. I told him I did not have it. His face went pale. He asked if I was new. I said yes. He said I needed to check the cabinet, the locked cabinet behind my seat. I told him I did not have a key to that cabinet. He got angry, started raising his voice, said he had paid already, and he needed his stuff. I did not know what he was talking about. I told him he could have any ice cream in my freezer for free to make up for the confusion. He looked at me like I was crazy, then walked back to his house, shaking his head. I finished the route that night with a bad feeling in my stomach. Several more customers had asked for items. I did not have items that seemed to be in the locked cabinet. Some of them got angry. Some of them just looked disappointed. All of them looked at me like I was missing something obvious. When I got back to the depot, I found Hector waiting for me. He did not look happy. He took me into his office and closed the door. He asked how the route went. I told him about the customers asking for items I did not have. He nodded slowly, like he was thinking about something. Then he opened his desk drawer and pulled out a small key. He said I'd done fine for my first night. He said from now on I would have access to the cabinet. He said the items in there were special products that certain customers pre-ordered. He said my job was simply to deliver them and collect the money. He said I did not need to know what was in the packages. He said the less I knew, the better for everyone. I looked at the key in his hand. I looked at his face, and I understood. The ice cream truck was a front. The night routes were not about ice cream at all. I was being asked to deliver drugs or something else illegal to customers who had placed orders through whatever system Hector had set up. The ice cream truck was the perfect cover. Nobody suspects an ice cream truck. Nobody stops an ice cream truck. It blends into neighborhoods without drawing attention. I told Hector I wasn't comfortable with this. I said I had signed up to sell ice cream, not to deliver packages that I was not allowed to open. He looked at me for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then he said I had two choices. I could take the key and do the job, and I would make 3 times what I was making on day routes. Or I could walk away right now, no hard feelings, and pretend I never saw anything. I walked away. But here is the thing. I did not just walk away quietly. I drove home that night, and I could not sleep. I kept thinking about those customers, about what they were receiving, about what Hector was running. I kept thinking about the fact that he had let me walk away without any threats, without any consequences. That scared me more than anything. It meant he was confident I would not talk. It meant he knew something about me that made him trust my silence. I did not sleep that night. I paced around my apartment, trying to decide what to do. By morning, I had made up my mind. I went to the police. I told them everything. The night routes, the locked cabinet, the customers asking for items that were not ice cream Hector's offer. They listened. They took notes. They asked me to come back later to make a formal statement. When I came back that afternoon, there were 2 detectives waiting for me. They said they had been investigating desert treats for almost a year. They said they knew Hector was using the trucks for distribution, but they had not been able to get anyone on the inside to cooperate. They asked if I would be willing to help them. I said yes. For the next 2 weeks, I went back to work at Desert Treats. I took the key. I did the night routes, but I was wearing a wire, and there was an unmarked car following me at a distance. Every delivery I made, every transaction was being recorded. The bust happened on a Thursday night. I was making my 7th delivery of the evening when a dozen police cars converged on the location. They arrested the customer, then followed me back to the depot, where they arrested Hector and 2 other people who worked for him. The investigation revealed that Desert Treats had been distributing methamphetamine and opioids across the Phoenix area for almost 3 years. Hector had built the operation slowly, using the ice cream trucks as mobile distribution points that could change routes and avoid detection. He had recruited drivers who did not ask questions, people who needed money badly enough to look the other way. I testified at the trial. Hector got 15 years. The other people involved got various sentences. Desert Treats was shut down. The trucks impounded, the whole operation dismantled. But here is the part that still bothers me. In those 3 years of operation, how many other drivers had taken the key and done the night routes without asking questions? How many people had been part of this without ever going to the police? And how many other ice cream truck operations across the country are doing the exact same thing right now? I think about that sometimes when I see an ice cream truck rolling through a neighborhood. I think about how the music and the bright colors and the innocent associations make us trust what we see. We think ice cream truck, and we think summer childhood happiness. We do not think about locked cabinets and night routes and pre-ordered packages. But maybe we should. I do not tell people this story often. Most people do not believe it. They think I am exaggerating or making it up. But I have the newspaper clippings from the trial. I have the thank you letter the district attorney sent me after the convictions. It happened. It was real. And every time I hear that familiar jingle playing somewhere in the distance, I wonder what else might be hiding behind those cheerful painted pictures of ice cream cones and popsicles. Story 3, The Follower. My name is Raymond, and I was 35 years old when this happened. I was living in a quiet suburb outside of Indianapolis, Indiana, with my wife, Sarah, and our 2 daughters, Emma, who was 7, and Lily, who was 5. It was August, the hottest part of summer, and an ice cream truck had started coming through our neighborhood every day around 4 in the afternoon. My daughters loved it. They would hear the music and come running begging for change. But after the 3rd week, I noticed that the truck was coming more often than it should, and it was stopping in front of our house, even when my daughters were not outside. Stay with me and hit subscribe, because what happened next nearly destroyed my family. Our neighborhood was called Riverside Estates, a development of about 40 houses built around a small man-made lake. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where block parties happened every summer, where you felt safe letting your kids play in the front yard. We had moved there 3 years earlier, specifically, because it seemed like the perfect place to raise a family. The ice cream truck started showing up in late July. It was a standard-looking truck, white with the usual colourful decorations, playing a tinny version of some classical melody I could never quite place. The driver was a man who looked to be in his early 40s. Friendly smile, introduced himself as Mike. He seemed normal enough, knew how to talk to kids, gave out free sprinkles, remembered the girls' favourite flavours. For the first couple of weeks, everything was fine. The truck would come by around 4. The girls would get their ice cream and it would move on to the next street. Normal summer stuff. Then I started noticing patterns. The truck would slow down as it passed our house, even when the girls were inside. It would sometimes make 2 passes through the neighborhood instead of 1. And on several occasions, I looked out the window to see it parked at the end of our street. Not moving, just sitting there with the engine running. I mentioned it to Sarah. She said I was being paranoid, that ice cream trucks probably did that all the time, waiting for more customers to come out. I wanted to believe her. I told myself I was overthinking it. Then Emma said something that made my blood run cold. We were having dinner one night, maybe 3 weeks into August, and Emma mentioned casually that Mike knew a lot about our family. She said he'd asked about her school, what grade she was in, who her teacher was. He'd asked about our house, how many bedrooms we had, whether we had a dog. He had asked about me and Sarah, what we did for work when we came home in the evenings. I put down my fork and asked Emma to tell me exactly what Mike had asked and what she had told him. The list was disturbing. He knew my work schedule. He knew Sarah worked from home on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He knew we did not have a security system. He knew Emma's bedroom was the one with the pink curtains on the 2nd floor. My 7-year-old daughter had innocently given this stranger a complete profile of our family and our home. I told Emma and Lily that they were not allowed to talk to the ice cream man anymore. No more buying ice cream, no more conversations, Nothing. They protested, cried, did not understand why Daddy was being so mean. I did not explain. I just made them promise. The next day I worked from home. I wanted to see the ice cream truck for myself, to observe what it did. At 4:15, right on schedule, I heard the music. I watched from the window as the truck came down our street. It slowed in front of our house, stopped. The music kept playing. I could see Mike in the driver's seat, looking toward our house, waiting. My girls were inside, as I had instructed. He sat there for almost 2 minutes, just waiting, before he finally moved on. When he got to the end of the street, he did not turn toward the next neighborhood, like he usually did. He pulled to the side and parked. I watched him for the next 15 minutes. He just sat there, engine idling music off, now facing back toward our house. I called the police. The officer who came was polite, but not particularly concerned. He said he would talk to the driver, ask him to move along. I watched from my porch as the officer walked up to the truck, had a brief conversation with Mike, and then came back to me. He said Mike claimed he was just taking a break, that driving the route was tiring, and he sometimes pulled over to rest. He said there was no law against parking on a public street. He said he had run the plates and everything came back clean. I was not satisfied, but there was nothing more I could do at that moment. The officer left. A few minutes later, Mike drove away. The next day I installed security cameras, 4 of them covering every angle of our house and yard. I did not tell Sarah, not yet. I didn't want to scare her without proof. 2 days later, I had proof. I was reviewing the footage from the night before, around 2 in the morning when I saw it. A figure walking down our street, stopping in front of our house. The image was grainy in the low light, but I could see enough. A man, average build, standing on the sidewalk looking at our house. He stood there for about 5 minutes, not moving, just staring. Then he walked away in the direction of where the ice cream truck usually parked. I showed the footage to Sarah. Her face went white. She asked what we should do. I said I was going to find out who this person was. The next afternoon, when the ice cream truck came by, I was waiting outside. I walked up to the truck as Mike was selling ice cream to another family. When he saw me, his smile flickered for just a moment before coming back full force. He asked if my girls wanted their usual. I said no. I said I wanted to talk to him. I said I had seen him parked at the end of our street watching our house. I said I had cameras and I had footage of someone walking past our house at 2 in the morning and stopping to stare. His smile faded. He looked at me with an expression I cannot quite describe. Not angry, not scared, empty. Like a mask had slipped, and I was seeing something underneath that had no emotion at all. He said I was mistaken. He said he was just doing his job. He said maybe I should be careful about making accusations I could not prove. I told him to stay away from my family. I told him I'd reported him to the police and I would report him again. I told him if I saw him parked on our street one more time, there would be consequences. He stared at me for a long moment. Then, that smile came back, but it was different now. Harder, colder. He said he understood. He said he would stay away. He said he hoped I had a nice day. The truck drove off. I watched it until it disappeared around the corner. For the next 3 days, there was no ice cream truck. No music, no sightings, nothing. I started to think maybe I had scared him off. Maybe confronting him had been enough. I was wrong. On the fourth night around 1:30 in the morning, our security alarm went off. Someone had tried to open the back door. I grabbed the bat I kept by the bed and ran downstairs. By the time I got to the back door, whoever had been there was gone, but they had left something behind. Sitting on the back porch, illuminated by the motion sensor light, was an ice cream bar. The same kind Emma always ordered, still frozen, placed deliberately where we would find it. A message. We called the police. They came, took a report dusted for fingerprints. They found nothing useful. No prints, no DNA, no witnesses. The ice cream bar was a common brand sold at grocery stores. There was no way to trace it. I did not sleep the rest of that night. I sat in the living room with the bat across my knees, watching the cameras on my phone, waiting for something to happen. The next morning, I started making calls. I tracked down the company that operated the ice cream truck. It was a legitimate business based about 40 miles away. I spoke with the owner and asked about Mike. There was a long pause. Then the owner said something that made my heart stop. He said they did not have a driver named Mike. He said their regular driver for our area was a woman named Patricia, who had been out sick for the past month. He said they had not sent any trucks to our neighborhood in over 4 weeks. The truck that had been coming to our street was not from his company. I hung up and called the police again. This time, they took it more seriously. They put out a notice to look for the truck, ran the plates I had written down when I first got suspicious. The plates came back as stolen, taken from a junkyard 3 months earlier. The truck was never found. Mike, or whatever his real name was never identified. He simply vanished along with his fake ice cream truck and his stolen plates. We moved 2 months later. Different city, different state. I couldn't stay in that house, couldn't let my daughters play in a yard where someone had stood watching them. Sarah agreed. We sold the house at a loss and started over somewhere new. It has been 4 years now. Emma is 11, Lily is 9. They do not remember much about that summer, and I have never told them the full story. They just know that we moved because of Daddy's job. But I remember. I remember standing on that street, looking into the empty eyes of a man who had spent weeks studying my family, learning our routines, building towards something I do not want to imagine. I remember the ice cream bar on my porch, a message that said, "I know where you live. I can get close whenever I want." And every summer when the weather gets hot and the ice cream trucks start rolling through neighborhoods, I think about how easy it would be for someone with bad intentions to buy a used truck, paint it up with colorful pictures, load it with frozen treats, and drive slowly through streets full of children who come running at the sound of the music. We trust ice cream trucks because we grew up trusting them. The music triggers something in us, some childhood memory of summer and innocence and simple pleasures. We do not think about who might be driving. We do not ask questions. We just send our kids running out with their dollar bills, never wondering if the person behind that little window has been watching, waiting, planning. I do not let my daughters buy from ice cream trucks anymore. They think I am overprotective. Maybe I am. But I know what can hide behind that cheerful music and those brightly painted pictures, and I will never ever forget it. Those were 3 disturbing true ice cream truck stories. These are vehicles we associate with childhood happiness, with summer afternoons, with the simple joy of a cold treat on a hot. The music, the colors, the memories they invoke, all of it creates a sense of trust that can be dangerously misplaced. As these stories show that trust can be exploited by predators looking for victims, by criminals using the trucks as cover for illegal activities, by people who've learned that the best way to get close to their targets is to look like something innocent and familiar. If you have children, pay attention to who is driving the trucks in your neighborhood. Ask questions, notice patterns, and teach your kids that the friendly face behind the window might not be as friendly as it seems. The music is designed to make us feel safe. But safety is not something that comes from a song. It comes from awareness, from vigilance, from never assuming that something is harmless just because it looks that way. Stay safe out there. And the next time you hear that familiar jingle coming down your street, take a moment to watch, to notice, to make sure that what you are seeing is actually what it appears to be. Because sometimes the monster comes in a white truck, playing happy music, selling ice cream to children who do not know any better.